Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with me, your host. We're going to be diving deep into something that I know a lot of you guys have asked about, and that is how to think in English.
Hi, everyone.
So I'm very excited to have an expert in language learning here today to help us break this down.
It's great to be here.
And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're finding this helpful, because we've got tons more language learning tips coming your way.
Yeah,
All right, so thinking in English,
right.
it can sound a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, it can be a little scary.
So what makes it so important when you're learning a new language? Why do we even need to think in English?
So when you translate in your head, it takes a lot of time.
Right.
It's like you're driving with the brakes on. You know what I mean? It's like you want to go fast, but you can't.
Yeah, you're always stopping.
Right. So thinking in English helps you speak more naturally and more quickly because you're not stopping to translate everything.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like when you're learning to drive a car for the first time, everything feels really jerky
Yeah.
until you kind of get used to it. But how do you even start doing that? Like, how do you start thinking in English, especially if you're a beginner?
Well, one thing that really helped me when I was learning a new language was to start small.
Okay.
Like, think about simple things you do every day.
Okay.
So, like, when you see a cup of coffee in the morning, you can think to yourself, this is a cup of coffee in English.
Oh, so you're not thinking the word for a cup of coffee in your native language. You're forcing yourself to think the English words.
Yes, exactly. And it'll feel strange at first, but it starts to become more natural the more you do it.
Right. So it's like building a new mental muscle.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I'm walking down the street, I see a dog, and I think, that's a cute dog in English,
Yeah,
even if it feels a little weird at first.
that's perfect.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be perfect grammar or anything.
Yeah.
Just get those English words flowing in your head is a huge step.
Yeah.
You can even narrate your whole day in your head like, I am brushing my teeth now.
Oh, I love that. So it's like you're giving yourself a running commentary on your life in English.
Yes,
I think that's something that anybody can try no matter what level you're at.
absolutely.
Um, what about something a little more challenging? What are some other ways to get those English thoughts flowing?
You can label things around your house with English sticky notes.
Oh, so like on my fridge, I put a sticky note that says refrigerator, and on my lamp, I put lamp.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but it really helps you connect the English word with the object in your everyday life. And it's a
Mhm.
constant visual reminder to think in English. I actually did this when I was learning Spanish, and it was kind of funny. My whole apartment was covered in sticky notes.
I bet your family love that.
But see, that was a little crazy.
So it's like you're turning your home into a giant English vocabulary game.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of games, there's another fun mental exercise you can try. Have a conversation with yourself in English, of course.
Wait, you mean like talking to myself in my head when people think I'm crazy?
Well, maybe don't do it out loud on the bus or the train.
Okay.
But having a silent conversation with yourself in English is a great way to practice thinking and forming sentences naturally. Like, for example, if you're deciding what to wear, you could think, should I wear the blue shirt or the red shirt today? The blue shirt looks better with these pants.
Okay, so that's such a good tip. Because sometimes I think we get so caught up in needing a speaking partner to practice.
Yes.
But this is something you can do literally anytime, anywhere. It's like you have a built-in English tutor in your brain.
Exactly. It's all about getting comfortable with using English in your own mind, even if it's just little conversations with yourself. And you know what? Don't worry about making mistakes.
Yeah.
The goal here is not perfect grammar. It's about getting those mental gears turning in English.
So we've got the sticky notes,
Yeah.
we've got the self-talk. What other tricks do you have up your sleeve for thinking in English?
Listening to English is key.
Okay, but we're talking about thinking in English. So how does listening help with that?
Well, think about it this way. When you immerse yourself in English by listening to music or podcasts or movies, you're exposing your brain to the natural rhythms and patterns of the language.
Okay, so it's like soaking your brain in English.
Exactly.
But how do you make that active so it translates into thinking?
Great question. The key here is to go beyond passive listening. When you hear a phrase, you try to repeat it out loud. Pay attention to the way the speaker pronounces the words.
So if I'm listening to a song and I hear a cool phrase, I should pause it and try to say it myself.
Yes.
Uh,
And you can even take it a step further with something called shadowing.
okay.
So basically, you try to speak along with the recording, mimicking the speaker's intonation and rhythm.
Shadowing. I love that. It's like you're becoming the speaker's shadow, mirroring their every word.
Exactly.
That sounds challenging, but super effective. Yeah.
It is challenging, but what's so fascinating about shadowing is that it forces you to process the language at a much deeper level. You're not just hearing the sounds, you're actively trying to reproduce them, which helps solidify those connections in your brain.
Oh, that's so cool. It's like you're training your brain to think and speak in English simultaneously.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from labeling things to inner dialogues to shadowing. But I'm curious, what about actually speaking out loud? That can be really intimidating for beginners.
Absolutely. You're right. Speaking can be nerve-wracking, especially when you're first starting out. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be a big, scary thing. Start small. Practice simple greetings like good morning or how are you, or ask yourself simple questions out loud like what's my name? My name is. It might feel silly, but it gets your mouth used to forming those English sounds.
So even if you don't have someone to practice with, you can still get those speaking muscles working just by talking to yourself.
Exactly. And if you do have a language partner, even better. But even if you're on your own, you can start building that confidence by speaking out loud, even if it's just to yourself.
This has been so insightful already. We've learned so much about how to start thinking in English, even for beginners. Before we move on, do you want to do a quick review of some of the key vocabulary that we've covered so far?
Sure. So we talked about translating, which means taking a word or phrase from one language and changing it into another. When you think in English, you're skipping that translation step altogether.
Right. And we discussed the idea of immersion, which is surrounding yourself with the English language as much as possible through listening to music, watching movies, even labeling things around your house.
We also covered inner dialogue, which is the act of having conversations with yourself in your head, in English, of course.
Yeah.
And we learned about shadowing, which is mimicking a native speaker's speech patterns and pronunciation.
Awesome recap. This is all such great advice. What would you say is the most important thing for listeners to remember as they start practicing thinking in English?
Well, the most important thing is to be patient with yourself and celebrate your progress. You know, it takes time and effort to rewire your brain to think in a new language.
Such great advice. We're going to dive into even more helpful tips after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's like learning any new skill. It takes time. It takes practice. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight. Just keep practicing and you will get there.
Yeah, I think that's such a key point. We live in a world of instant gratification, but learning a language, it really is a journey, not a race. It's about enjoying the process and celebrating those little wins along the way. Speaking of wins, do you have any stories about how thinking in English has actually helped you or your students in real life?
Oh, absolutely. I had a student who was really struggling with speaking fluently. She understood grammar, had a decent vocabulary, but she just couldn't seem to get the words out in conversation. We started working on thinking in English, and it was like a light bulb went off for her. She told me that once she stopped translating in her head, she felt so much more confident and relaxed when speaking. She even started dreaming in English.
Wow, dreaming in English.
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate sign of immersion.
I know.
It's amazing how powerful this technique can be. It's not just about memorizing words. It's about changing the way you process language on like a fundamental level.
Exactly. It's like you're rewiring your brain to think in a new way. And it's not just about speaking either.
Right.
Thinking in English can also help you improve your reading and writing skills.
Oh, okay.
When you can think in the language, you can understand written text more easily and you can express yourself more clearly in writing.
That makes sense. It's like all the skills are connected.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with any aspect of English speaking, listening, reading, writing, it's like working on thinking in English can kind of have this ripple effect
Yes,
and
definitely.
improve all those areas.
Yeah.
I'm curious, What about those times when you get stuck? So you're thinking in English, but you just can't find the right word. What
Right.
do you do?
Oh, that happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Even native speakers have those tip of the tongue moments.
Right.
The key is to not let it derail you. Don't switch back to your native language. Instead, try to describe the word you're looking for using other English words.
Oh, so if I'm trying to say, I need that thing you use to open a bottle, I could say, I need a tool with a spiral shape that removes the cap.
Exactly. It might sound a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but it keeps you thinking in English and it forces you to be more creative with your
I
language.
love that. It's like a mental workout for your English skills.
Yes, and over time, you'll find that you need to do that less and less. As you continue to think in English, the words will come to you more naturally.
This is also encouraging. It feels like thinking in English is something that anyone can achieve with the right mindset and practice.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and enjoying the process.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid to make mistakes, to laugh at yourself, and to experiment with different techniques. Find what works best for you and stick with it.
I think that's such an important message. Sometimes we get so caught up in the right way to learn a language that we forget to have fun with it.
Yeah,
Learning English should be an adventure, not a chore.
exactly. And the more you enjoy the process, the more likely you are to stick with it and achieve your goals.
Hmm. Speaking of goals, we talked about some great techniques earlier, labeling things, inner dialogue, shadowing. Are
Yeah.
there any other strategies that you recommend for making thinking in English a regular habit?
One thing that I find really helpful is to incorporate English into your daily routine. Like, for example, you can start your day by reading a short English news article or listening to an English podcast while you get ready.
Oh, that's a great idea. It's like starting your day with a little dose of English immersion.
Exactly. And you can also try to incorporate English into your hobbies. Like if you love cooking, try following an English recipe, or if you enjoy watching movies, challenge yourself to watch one with English subtitles.
So it's all about finding those little opportunities to expose yourself to the language throughout the day.
Absolutely. And you know what else can be really helpful? Keep a journal in English.
Oh, that's a great idea. I
Yeah.
used to do that when I was learning Spanish, and it really helped me to improve my writing skills and to solidify my vocabulary.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just jot down your thoughts, your feelings, or even just a summary of your day. It's a great way to practice expressing yourself in English and to track your progress over time.
I think that's a perfect example of how learning a language can be integrated into your life in a fun and meaningful way.
Absolutely.
It's not just about textbooks and grammar rules, it's about making the language a part of your everyday experience.
I completely agree. And the more you can do that, the more natural it will feel to think in English.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into the world of thinking in English.
It has.
We've learned so much about the benefits, the challenges, and the practical strategies for making it happen. Before we wrap things up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are ready to embark on this journey?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's all about building those small habits and finding ways to make English a natural part of your life. It's not about perfection, it's about progress and enjoying the process.
Absolutely. I think that's such a good point. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting better every day and actually having fun while you're doing it.
Right. And it's amazing what the brain can do. The more you expose yourself to English and make an effort to think in the language, the easier it becomes. It's like you're creating new pathways in your brain and making English more and more accessible.
Yeah, it really is like learning to ride a bike. At first, it feels all wobbly and awkward, but then with practice, it just becomes second nature, and then you can't imagine not being able to ride a bike.
Exactly. And just like riding a bike thinking in English can open up a whole new world of possibilities. You can connect with people from different cultures. You can explore new ideas. You can even advance your career.
So many benefits. It's really inspiring to think about. Okay, before we wrap up this awesome deep dive, let's do a quick review of some of the key vocabulary we've covered today. First up, we have fluency. Fluency basically means being able to speak or write a language easily and accurately.
And to achieve that fluency, we talked about eliminating the need for translation. Translation is the process of converting words or text from one language to another. But when you're thinking in English, you're bypassing that step altogether.
Exactly. And we talked about immersion, which is like surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible. This can be done through listening, reading, and even thinking in English.
We also explored the concept of inner dialogue, which is simply the act of talking to yourself in your head in English, of course.
Of course. And for those who want to really level up their speaking skills, we discussed shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a native English speaker and try to repeat what they're saying as closely as possible, mimicking their intonation and pronunciation.
And let's not forget the simple but effective practice of journaling. Journaling is a great way to practice writing and expressing your thoughts in English.
Awesome recap. Now, for our listeners who are ready to take action, what's one small step they can take today to start thinking in English?
I would say choose one simple phrase or sentence in English and make a conscious effort to incorporate it into your thoughts throughout the day.
I love that. It could be as simple as good morning when you wake up, or what a beautiful day when you step outside, or even I'm going to rock this English thing.
Exactly. It's about starting small and building from there. And remember, every step you take, no matter how small it is a step closer to fluency.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of thinking in English. We've learned so much about the benefits, the techniques, and even the importance of embracing those mistakes along the way. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe and like. It really helps more language lovers like you find the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you all today.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone.
Thanks for joining the conversation here at Kaz English. We hope you found it fun and informative. Don't forget to check out kazapp.uk. That's kazapp.uk for more tips, resources, and interactive practice. Keep exploring, keep chatting, and we'll catch up with you again